was really growing and getting really good is the market education. I think heat storage is still underrated worldwide. Heat generally is underrated worldwide. Without any market research, you probably should not develop a product. Problem definition needs to be defined very clearly what you want to develop. And then what we have seen, which is very favorable, is...
Hey everyone, quick note for you. You're currently listening to the free preview of this episode. If you'd like the full thing, the full shebang, go over to our Substack. That's cleantechies.substack.com/subscribe and become a paid subscriber. Any paid subscription gets you full access to the show on the Clean Techies Substack. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Clean Techies podcast. Today it's Silas here. I'll be your host, and we are talking about industrial heat. So today I actually have the pleasure of speaking with the founder and CEO of Kraftblock, Martin Schichtel. He's based out of Germany and building some really, really cool kind of, I guess you could say, industrial heat storage system using a synthetic kind of blend of different ceramic materials to store heat up to very, very high heats, right? So something that's common in this space is for you to store heat in cement or something that's it's decent heat, but it doesn't really work for industrial use cases. They can store heat up to 1300 degrees Celsius, so very, very high, and it works really well for all those companies who need high heat use cases. He's got a great story. I mean, he works in the industry, in the heat industry, and he just started to recognize kind of the advances of technology in the space. He got really curious, started asking questions of the developers who were building projects in the space, and eventually kind of penciled out on his own that he thought he could do something, right? He believed that he had the right stuff. So the most important part of this probably is that he made sure that on paper this would work before then kind of fully committing to this and developing the first project in about 4 to 5 years. Now, they're currently developing projects. I think they've got 5 deployed at the time of recording, and they will eventually go to a modular system so that they can scale much faster. But one of the really, really fascinating parts about what he's done is because he knew people and he understood the needs of people who consume heat in this industrial sector, he was actually able to get them to pay for the pilot projects, right? This is a super uncommon thing. Usually you blow a whole bunch of your funding to pay for your first pilot or a couple demonstration plants. He was able to get his customers to do that because he built trust with them. He had demonstrated the technology, just enough in the lab that he could convince them this is worth doing, and got them to pay for it. And to this day, the way they still manage it is that their customers pay for these systems kind of straight up, right? They will over time kind of transition to more of like a heat as a service model, but just a really fascinating way to get a very difficult type of technology and product off the ground. He's got so many different insights. After we cover his technology and the founding of the company, we run through a number of different things, including his takes on how to de-risk hardware technology ideas and much, much more. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy this episode with Martin. I know I did. We'll see you on the other side. All right. Welcome to the show, Martin. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful today. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, really excited to have you on. Where are you calling in from today exactly?
I'm calling in from Germany, so exactly southwest of Germany, close to the border of France and Luxembourg.
Very nice. I hear that's a pretty area, right?
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah. Also for doing business, right? So
very good. That's good. Yeah.
One.
I've never traveled to Germany yet. I've actually planned to go there a couple times, but my plans always got thwarted. So someday I will go there.
So if you love hiking and biking, perfect environment here.
Sounds good. Awesome. Well, I guess to start us off, like the first question we like to ask is, who is one kind of clean techie or clean tech OG that you would love to have dinner with?
Quite tough question at the beginning. So there are different ones. I'm thinking about Bill Gates or Pilar Cruz from Cargill, which are pretty great in that sector. But I think tonight I would go for William Kamkwan Marble, probably better known than Malawi windmill guy. Pretty old story, but actually I was inspired listening to that story, building a windmill from waste parts in order to leverage necessity in the communities and the upliftment of the communities in Malawi itself. I think a wonderful guy to talk to tonight.
Interesting. That is definitely a name I've not heard before. I'll have to look into it. Tell us, I guess, a little bit about your background and your journey into climate in general then as well.
Yeah, I'd love to do so. So my background is studied chemistry a long while ago, took a PhD in nanotechnology, and more or less all of my life I was involved somehow in thermal processes. So spending my time in companies, developing thermal coatings to improve furnace efficiencies, or anti-stick coatings for slacks in flue gas streams. So I always have seen a lot of temperature, a lot of heat, a lot of waste heat, to be very honest, but never thought about making use of it, right? It was not my job at that point in time, but it took me from being a chemist to a sales guy towards more and more in thermodynamics and thinking about heat. That's how it came up.
Interesting. So I guess you have a PhD in chemistry, as you mentioned, and also nanotechnology, I think. And so just, broadly a very, very technical background, but you
Yeah,
now find yourself as the founder and CEO of a company,
true.
fast growing climate tech startup. So I'm kind of curious, what's your advice to highly technical people who do want to follow in that footsteps of eventually going towards more of the commercial side? Like what influenced you to feel comfortable doing this at some point?
Yeah. Yes, actually, I also had a basic education in economics. So, taking my PhD, I was also doing my bachelor in economics because I knew if I want to do a career in the industry anyway, I have to understand the economics, to understand money and what it means to deal with it. So, I already had a good basic knowledge. But actually, I think entrepreneurship means always you have to get a clue upon how to earn money, how to drive the company to the next level, because you need money again to take the next steps as well. So somehow, even if you build a tech company, you are well associated with money. And either you did at university or ideally also by a kind of a training, whatever it is. I mean, there are enough trainings that are offered from various universities, even for night hours.
Yeah, so just basically get some kind of exposure to the money side of things and how things work, and
Absolutely.
that should probably take you in the right direction. Yeah, sounds about right. I think it's very difficult sometimes when you're early in your career. You already had a hard enough time picking
Yeah,
what technical degree to focus on, and then you're like, okay, what's next, right?
absolutely.
But yeah, what is on this topic of career pieces? Like, what is one piece of advice that you got early on in your career that really stuck with you, and you think that kind of formed you as you were developed?
Yeah, actually, that would be a quote from a good friend of mine who is in the insolvency business. He taught me at a very early time in German. It's like das Denken an das Geldvermögen verhindert das Denkvermögen. So translating a little bit like thinking about wealth hinders the ability to think. And I think that's pretty clear. If you just think about the money, you never think about intellectual creative thoughts. So you cannot develop anything. If you put it in the background and just focus on the work that you are doing, on the skills that you have to take it to the next level, money will come anyway. So do stop thinking about money. Think about the tech you want to develop, and money will follow.
I love that. My godfather is actually German, so I've heard some of these sayings, and I'm a very big fan of the English translation of these German sayings. They're always quite funny to me.
It's
So I guess tell us. Let's get into the technology, right? So tell us a little bit about what your technology is, and just kind of in very simple terms and how it works.
You know that feeling when you meet someone who shares your vision for the future? It just clicks, like two peas in a pod. Well, that's exactly how we felt when we met Goodwin, who we are proud to have as our sponsor.
Being the first major law firm to set up a climate-specific startup and venture practice makes them exactly the kind of partner we are excited to work with. They realize that there are a plethora of challenges to building climate tech startups, and that's why they have built an entire suite of resources for founders, investors, and entrepreneurs in the space. They even offer several tailored pricing methods. And guess what? It doesn't matter where you are listening to this. Goodwin is a global law firm that you can trust to be your partner through it all, from incorporation to exit. They've got you covered.
Go to goodwinlaw.com and tell them Clean Techie sent you to get exclusive access to startup resources. All right, back to the show.
Yeah. So simply speaking, our technology is the thermal energy storage system that was developed to decarbonize various industries and increase energy efficiency. At the end, it's nothing else but a hot stone, extremely smart, extremely well developed to store thermal energy, release thermal energy. And we connect this stone with different types of charging and discharging options. So you can use waste heat, you can use renewable electricity or concentrated solar power to charge it. And on the discharging side, just a question, what type of energy does the customer need? Is it back to heat or back to electrification? So it's a fully modularized setup to have maximum flexibility.
Interesting. So you can discharge it as either heat or electricity. I guess
Yeah.
is the project, are these all project based or modular based type of products?
To be very honest, both at the moment. At the moment, it's more project-based because it's a quite young industry at the moment. It's not fully mature, so you have to develop a first project. What we at least do is, based on this first project, we standardize it, and from that point in time on, it's just a modular concept that we can deploy with many customers.
Yeah, because obviously you need to get to the point where you can scale, right, and just kind of drop them off and plug it in. I mean, obviously
Exactly.
it's not just that easy, but you need to make it as easy as possible for mass
Yeah.
adoption, right?
So
At the point where you're at now, I guess what is the risk, right? Is it mostly engineering risk at this point to scale up to the large scale, or is it science risk? It sounds like you've already sorted most of that
no.
out.
Yeah, no, actually, science risk, there is no science risk anymore. So that's what we did in the past, last 10 years. But engineering risk, there's always an engineering risk, right? Especially if you want to build and scale a modular system, there are interface challenges you do have either on customer side or from the charging side towards the utilities. But basically, it's state of the art. So we do not invent a power to heat system. It's already existing, right? But we do need to know how do we combine it with our storage solution to deploy the energy to our customers. And the same for the project base. It's project business. So we have the typical EPC risks, right? So that's the issue. It's not the science.
Got it. Yeah. It's always good to get to that point because then it's a little bit easier for investors to jump in, right? not
Absolutely.
as
Yeah, it
not
is.
as behind the sky ideas, right? And then can you just talk about how who are your customers? It sounds like you've got a wide variety, but who are your customers and what's the revenue model?
Yeah. So basically, customers across different industries. We do have customers in the ceramics industry where we deployed our first storages and they already ordered another storage for the same factory. So something went right. So we did it. We did the right developments. But also in the steel industry, in the food industry, from next year on, also chemical industry, pretty broad setup. And that's basically due to our storage platform, storage and combine it with different charging and discharging options to serve the customer needs. So we can deploy it one storage in multiple options, multiple sites as well. And revenue model till 31st of December 2024, it's just customer owned systems. So selling the technology to the customer, selling the storage to the customer. From January next year on, we are also offering leasing models, rent models, heat as a service models to make it a little bit easier for the customer to deploy the systems.
Yeah, because I can imagine there's just some customers who may be interested, but they just can't finance it upfront, right?
Yeah, the upfront financing is some topics, some issues, of course. You do have the operational risk, you do have maintenance, you do have services. And if we offer this in a bundle to the customer, it should be easier for them to install those systems.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And then what are, I guess, the customers doing now to solve the problem? Is there something they're trying to employ at the moment to solve this issue?
They think about various technologies that are on the market today, right? So thermal energy storage is one of them. You do have heat pumps for other applications. You have hydrogen. You do have direct electrification. So meanwhile, they are popping up a lot of technologies a customer might be able to use. But basically, most of our customers still use the fossil world, so gas or even oil. Worst case, it's coal. And they need to rethink those systems independently from their ESG goals or climate goals. There is also, let's say, the push from the market. The final customer wants to have more sustainable products, so they cannot stick at the old world. They have to convert, and our solution is one of them.
Interesting. So you're saying from a regulatory perspective, but also the end user perspective, they just want to buy things that are produced with renewables, for example.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Is that
Strong
something
hands.
do you guys have clients throughout the world or primarily in Europe?
No. For example, we are executing one project which is in the commissioning phase in India at the moment. Europe, of course, with PepsiCo, Eneco in the Netherlands, but also approaching projects in Australia and South America as well. So across the world.
So are you seeing that same, let's call it customer side demand to have the clean products everywhere in the world, or is that just a European thing?
No, it's not just a European thing. I think that's a business worldwide, a business that is growing worldwide, especially if you think for about South America, for example, Chile, Brazil, they are strongly increasing their renewables deployment. There is cheap electricity in the market. So you can use the electricity to electrify your process heat demand as well and get rid of importing gas or coke from other countries as well, which is also beneficial for the commonwealth of the country itself, right? So there are some triggers how companies, but also countries approach the green business.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how, as countries develop and these new technologies are more like proven and available, if they can just skip the whole, dirty fuels first and go straight to clean things.
Yeah, if you're going back, if we just would split, which is not true anymore, into developed countries and not developed countries so far, those emerging countries, they have the chance actually to jump over the fossil decade, right? Because new solutions are available at the moment and they immediately could install PV, they could install wind, they could install the renewable generation for all their processes they will build in future. And I think this will be one of the, let's say, large milestones also in the fight against climate change, if they
Mhm.
step up and take already the next step before they take into account the gas or fossil fuels world
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. I think it's always going to be a matter of talent, right? Can you get the right people who know how to do these things, who are willing to go to those places and do it? Because there's a plethora of, oil and gas talent out there. That's probably, part of the reason why it's easier for them to find those people to
Yeah.
develop those technologies. Climate tech founders are taking on a huge challenge. Not only do they need to know how to build a startup, but they also need to deal with hardware, have a strong handle on climate policy, know how to fundraise from diverse investor types. It's a lot.
That's why we made Clean Techies, the #1 podcast for climate tech entrepreneurs. In addition to our jobs, we devote 20 hours a week to producing this podcast for you. This way you can learn from the people who have walked the path before you, learn from their mistakes, and gain insights on navigating this complex journey. If this mission resonates with you, we are asking for your help. It takes a lot of effort and it's not free.
If you are already a subscriber and want to help, start supporting us today by going to Substack and clicking Upgrade to Paid. Thanks for helping all the climate tech entrepreneurs like you.
Yeah. Brings me back to the guy I want to have for dinner tonight, William, because he educated himself and built his windmill made from scrap, literally from scrap over there. But it's like you said, right? So if you think about the future, if you think about education, that's the way to go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then what scale are you guys at today in terms of how many deliveries you're doing, how many projects you've built?
Yeah, we deliver now the 5th product or the 5th project to customers, which means finally we are in the scale of like 22 megawatt charging, 150 megawatt of storage capacity, roughly like this. The deployments that we start next in the engineering phase will be already 4 times larger than what we deployed today. But I think that's a typical approach in basically plant engineering and constructions, right? Because you have to prove it in small scale. You are allowed to take the next step to go to the next scale and so on. That's what I find a little bit pity in that business, right? Instead of going full scale immediately, now you have to prove several steps before you are allowed to do it, yes.
Yeah, but obviously once other people see your technology working elsewhere, I think they'll be much less concerned about that, right? So I just want to make sure I recap this and back up. So broadly speaking, you have a thermal technology, meaning you, with your own kind of invention of storage, you've got, maybe you could explain that slightly more. If you've got different synthetic materials that can store energy really, really well.
Yeah.
Maybe before I continue, you want to maybe dive into that just slightly more, like how you ended up coming up with that specific kind of mixture of technologies. I'm assuming it's a mixture of materials.
It is, definitely is. And there's also a longer story behind. It's a little bit the funding story of Kraftblock. I told that I was in the heat business anyway, but with other applications, not the heat applications directly. So it was always in underconscious. There is waste heat. How can we use it? And in 2008, pretty long while ago, I saw a TV report about a heat storage made of concrete. Right? So I said, well, cool idea, cheap material, you can cast in each shape, it's available worldwide. But why do they just pretend it can store 500 degrees C? So 500 degrees C in the world I have been living was warm up temperature. It was not high temperature. So I just called the developers and asked them, why are you limited with the temperature profile in concrete? We discussed. And if I translate it to the modern times now, I would say, at that point in time, I didn't watch Netflix series, but took a typical scientific approach. What is the problem? How did people try to solve it? What can be done differently? And that's how it went till I came up with a materials composition that was not known before in that sense, which was at least on paper more effective, even cheaper than concrete. And so basically Kraftblock started. It was just scientific curiosity.
Got it. Okay, so we'll get into that in a little bit more here, but just to kind of recap my point here. So what you guys do is you kind of mix these different materials, you turn it into effectively a large heat sink for different industrial customers, and they currently pay you up front to install these systems, and then they can use that as an energy storage system, so they can charge it in various ways, using cheap electricity or whatnot, and then discharge it for their own processes, whether that is electricity or heat at the time of use. And you currently do it on a project basis, but you will be going to a modular kind of scaled up production at some point as you guys continue to refine the technology. And as you mentioned, also starting next year, the way you make money is also through leasing or heat as a service. Is that correct?
Yeah, perfect summary.
Cool. So back to that origin story, because that is really interesting. I guess tell us how did you, once you started kind of picking out this idea, What did it look like, to come up with, a prototype? Were you just working on this in your garage? Like, what did it look like?
I would love to have developed things in the garage, but unfortunately, we do have a lot of regulations in Germany, so garage would not have been the right point. Now, I really got a very good offer from a startup center at the university in Saarbrücken, which means we just had to pay for the office space and a little bit our own lab, but we're able to use the equipment of the university as well. So not necessarily buying our own electronic microscope or measurement systems for viscosity or what else it is. We could use equipment as it was there. And that definitely helped to further develop the storage material, or evaluate the materials data, do a lot of testing of the material before we released it. Basically, if you're in material science, you already can, let's call it, pre-calculate the characteristics of a material. So I already could calculate what is the potential storage capacity, what is the potential conductivity of the storage material, what would be the surface area of pellets, of honeycomb system, whatever it is. So basically using all the natural-based science I learned before, I could integrate in this process. That's why I said before starting the company, the material was fully developed on paper. So we just had to turn it into reality, into a real product. And that's what we did during the first, 4 to 5 years of our company's life. So building the material, optimizing the material, designing the whole storage system, testing the full storage system at lab scale. But whilst doing this, we had a lot of customer conversations at that point. So to develop our storage to the needs of the customer and not to the vision that we had about the product, because the vision is completely different. Probably will deliver the product that I had in mind 10 years ago in 10 years and not now. But finally, you have to sell it. You have to generate cash flow. So you need to stick to the needs of your customer. And that's what we did in the first 5 years, to have a tailored product for the market.
So were you still working for somebody else at the time, or did you have to kind of fully commit to this for that long period of development?
No, basically after this pre-development on paper, I fully committed to the development of Kraftblock, or building Kraftblock directly.
So the development on paper was prior to getting into the university to do some testing. Oh, okay,
Yes,
got it.
yes.
Understood. So interesting. I really like that. I think it's to me always challenging for people to understand how it looks to start a hardware company. You can't just,
It is.
it's easier with software. You can just go talk to customers, right? And you can do that on your weekends and spare time and make sure, okay, we've got it. Now let's go build the software, right? It's not the same thing when there's science risk involved. So I really appreciate you telling that story. Hope people will be encouraged to find ways to do that themselves as well.
Me too.
So let's talk a little bit about the energy storage landscape in general. So we kind of alluded to it, but just as a primer for listeners, most people will be familiar. The whole problem that we have right now with using renewables is a lot of it's intermittent. So the sun isn't always shining, or the wind isn't always blowing, and people need to store the energy so they can use it, at the other times when it's not. And there's a lot of different people, trying to build energy storage from a heat perspective, maybe from a weight perspective, or lithium-ion batteries. I guess getting that cost of storage down low is what's going to allow people to have renewables at all times. So I guess with that, tell us, what is the kind of current state of this storage industry globally? And, what are some of the solutions people are trying, and the summary of those, pros and cons of each?
Yeah, basically, if I would give my summary over the last 10 years, what was really growing and getting really good is the market education. When we started the company, I was talking to customers about high temperature energy storages. They say, oh, cool, great, another 120 degrees C hot water storage. No, I'm thinking more about 800, 1000, 1200 degrees C in a system. How would you do this? Right? And today, even if we get inbound requests at Kraftblock, they are already pre-qualified. We know exactly what process it is, what type of energy they're using today, how they want to evolve to the next stage. So the market education grew pretty much. Basically, I think heat storages still are underrated worldwide. Heat generally is underrated worldwide. Everybody thinking about electricity, battery storages, might be lithium batteries, might be redox flow, whatever type is. The next stage is hydrogen or ammonia to store any type of energy. And the last on Prio 2 is 3, it's heat storage, right? What we see also is that especially heat storage are getting more and more popular. When we started the company, there was a handful of competitors worldwide. If I take a look to the landscape now, it's 30, 40 competitors. Even universities, institutes are focusing on developing thermal storage materials to decarbonize the whole heat generation, but also heat storage in the future. So there is a strong development in the market. And you said it rightly, right? We are heading more and more for renewables, more intermittent energies, more fluctuating energies. And it doesn't make any sense to triple the quantity of windmills because they are still generating electricity if the wind blows, right? So we need to buffer the excesses to deliver during the demand times. And that's both electrical storage, but also heat storage perfectly suited for.
So is there a reason why heat storage is becoming more popular? Or is there just a kind of an understanding that they can likely make it cheaper than electric storage?
Yes, I think there is, because a couple of years ago, also corporates understood that usually more than 50% of their energy demand is heat demand. And one of their scope one emissions is the consumption and burning fossil fuels, right? And if they have to bring it down, they have to think about alternatives. And that's where heat storage is coming into play. Heat storages in general also have a big advantage over lithium batteries. They are much cheaper. They deliver exactly the energy the customer needs, means heat, and which is not unimportant. Usually those customers know heat. They know heat better than they know electricity. So it's just a psychological element in this equation, which makes it a little bit easier for customers to introduce heat storage rather than battery storages. Last but not least, heat storages do have a service life of 30, 40, 50 years. And if you compare this to battery storages, well, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years. If you then have to double your capex because you have to invest in a new battery storage, well, business case is gone. And these are just some of those points in the world, but also the corporates and companies started thinking about, and that's why they are delving much deeper into thermal storages now.
Well, I mean, it makes sense that you wouldn't want to store your energy in electricity just to turn it back into heat later, because that's a lack of efficiency. But
Yep.
I'm curious, are there any permitting benefits typically to thermal storage versus battery storage?
I think there are lower hurdles for thermal storages compared to battery storages, because in the regulations, I would say in most of the use cases, thermal storages are still an equivalent for heat exchangers. Technically seen, there are nothing else but heat exchangers, right? You convert heat from air to some solid material, so they are a heat exchanger. That's why there are not that much permits to be fulfilled if you deploy a thermal storage. Of course, you have to fulfill safety requirements, insurance requirements, and a couple of other things, but that's state of the art.
Yeah, I mean,
That's nothing new to invent.
it just seems it would be easier, because I remember working in the battery storage space in recruitment a while back. There was a lot of requirements for like where is it sited, and is it protected from water coming in, and chemical leaks or whatever. So it would make sense that it'd be a little bit easier, which could be a nice benefit to it. That's the big problem right now around the world, is getting things deployed. Right, we have some technology, but deployment takes a while because of permitting. I can't imagine how it is in Germany.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also about the footprint of the system, right? So if you have a very well populated industrial area, there's not that much space to deploy megawatt hours of battery storages. Just one comparison we did recently. So in the deployment in the Netherlands, one of our storage units was roughly 35 megawatt hour on thermal energy. And the footprint of that unit is nearly 34 square meters. So pretty small footprint. Not far away from that site, RWE installs a lithium battery storage, also with roughly 40 megawatt hour of storage capacity. So comparable if you would convert it to heat. And this footprint is 2,500 square meters. So it's really exploding, the footprint. And if you want to deploy those systems into existing industry sites, and I mean, most of the installations are brownfield applications, you have to somehow also fit the small footprint that is available, right? And there's also a big advantage for thermal storage.
Yeah, because not everywhere is Houston, where there's too much land everywhere. So that makes a lot of sense. We talked a little bit about this earlier with the consumers kind of demanding, let's call it clean products or cleanly produced products.
Yeah.
But are there any other specific market conditions within like Germany or Europe broadly, with energy prices shooting up or regulations changing, that are also driving people to really consider technologies like yours?
Yes, definitely there are. We see in more and more countries that the electricity generation by renewables is already competitive to the gas price. Not necessarily a one-to-one, but if we then take into account regulatories like ETS schemes, so carbon dioxide taxes or fees on top of the gas or fossil fuels, electricity is already pretty competitive to gas. And then shifting to the new world, also and also supported by regulatorics, that helps the customer to drive towards the renewable world and using thermal storages instead of their gas combusted systems they used in the past. I think that's one is of major importance, definitely.
Okay, so let's shift to a little bit about waste. So we talked about waste heat, obviously, and I think if I understand correctly, the way you guys build your products is also from some of the kind of scraps of other industries. I don't know if that's correct, but can you talk a little bit about that kind of overall space and what's being done with the waste right now, specifically the waste materials that you're using to create Kraftblock?
Yes. Yeah, happy to do so. So one of our basic hypotheses was also to have a very sustainable product. So life cycle assessment was on the agenda from the very first drafts of the whole storage system itself. Meanwhile, we can recycle more than 99% of the whole storage device again, either to other products, new products, or even take it back to circular economy. And so we also needed to develop a new type of storage material. And in our idea, it was taking back materials into the circular economy, which are usually getting disposed somewhere. So we're using things like slag from the steel industry or waste of the bauxite production, waste of the copper production, because those materials already have seen high temperatures, so they do not change if you heat it up to 1000 degrees C or even higher, which is a positive effect. They do have high capacities. There is a huge availability, no issue with the supply chain, because those materials get produced since 40, 50, 60 years. If there wouldn't be any new steel slags, we literally could mine it, right? Because there is enough slag available worldwide, and the same for the other materials. So we developed a process to upcycle those materials to our storage material, which basically resulted also in a kind of modular materials concept, because we can use the steels like from the US, from India, from Australia. There are small deviations in the quality, but we know how to balance them out, right? So literally we can use all the materials that are available in the world. Means we designed a new materials basis. We also could replace steel slag against something different. That doesn't matter. We know how to do it, right? And so we created we call it a future-proof material, because you can replace it against other materials. You can develop much more, let's call it efficient materials for a special temperature range. At the moment, we have one which is pretty good between 300 and 1300 degrees C. But there might be a need to have a specialized material for 600 to 800 degrees C for some reasons, right? And we easily can tailor our materials to this, mainly using these recycled materials.
Interesting. Are those companies with the waste products, do they pay to get rid of that right now so that you can just take it off their hands for free? Like, how does that work that it maybe
Yes.
like reduces your input costs?
No, unfortunately, if our team has an idea for a component, usually before somebody is doing a CAD drawing and taking FEM, CFD calculations to simulate the whole system, the team is going to our workshop and they actually either print or they build we have been pretty convincing about the concept, about showing the simulation, how it would work out, what the benefits for their industry is. The first pilots were, in my opinion, small-scale pilots, so just a 10-foot container with not that strong invest. And basically...
All right, everybody, that is the end, unfortunately, of the free version of this episode. If you're getting this message, you're probably listening on Spotify or Apple, somewhere where not the entire show is shared. If you'd like to get the rest of this episode, including the rest of our discussion around how to validate your hardware ideas, navigating different market dynamics in the clean energy sector, and certain emerging trends, as well as a couple underrated founders he wanted to share with us, you can go over to our Substack, cleantechies.substack.com/subscribe, and you can either unlock your one-time free kind of a test trial, I guess you could say, to hear a full episode, a full paid episode. Usually those last 7 days, I think, the trial. Or you can become a paid supporter of what we're doing. If you like the work, if you think we do a good job, got the right guests on, become a paid supporter of the work. We put a lot of effort into it, and it does cost money to do. It's not just free. There's no podcasting fairies that pay the bills. So if you want to support us, go over there to cleantechies.substack.com/subscribe. Choose any paid tier. If you do so, you'll get access to this entire episode, as well as all of our episodes in the future and all of our other bonus content. And drumroll please, you also get to join our WhatsApp community of other paid supporters who, we chat with different things about what they're going through, what they're working on. Sometimes ask them if they have particular questions they'd like us to ask upcoming guests. So you get a little bit of an inside scoop, if you will. Nothing extremely, we're not going skiing in Tahoe, Lake Tahoe or something like that together, but we're definitely building some community. So if you like that, jump on over and become a paid subscriber, and hopefully we will see you on the other side and you can get the rest of this great, valuable episode. Cheers.